There was controversy. It entered bedroom conversations and living room conversations and school corridor, not school, okay, college corridor
College corridor.
conversations, you know.
Wonderfully. Good morning and good afternoon, actually, to a lot of people who have joined this podcast on the various channels. I have a very, very special friend today. I normally say I have a very special person, but this person is very, very special. So I have with me Adi Pocha. Adi actually needs no introduction. He is known to a lot of people, but still formally in I'll formally introduce him. So he is a writer filmmaker and a veteran of the advertising and communications and entertainment world for over 40 years now. He has a lot of firsts to his credit. He started what was perhaps the first Indian soap on TV, a series called Shanti, which had the debut of a lot of today's stars like Mandira Bedi. Before that, he was a creative director at Lintas and also was a director of UTV. When he was with Lintas, he worked on a campaign for Kama Sutra condoms, which featured Pooja Bedi. He also was the creator of a game show, probably India's first well-known game show called Saap Seedi, where Mohan Kapoor was there. And a lot of people might remember that one. He has also written a book, a fiction novel called Behram's Boat, which was launched last year. And he runs his own podcast called Fellowship of Lost Creative Souls, where he has interviewed some of the best known people from the creative world like Shabana Azmi, Usha Uttup, Prahlad Kakkad, and many, many more. He used to write a fortnightly column in the Indian Express. Some of the old timers who used to read newspapers in the 90s may remember, called Rebel Without a Clue. And he currently writes a very, very popular blog every Friday. He has many, many more interests, which includes playing music. He plays the guitar. He is a regular cyclist. He cycles almost every day. He's a motorcyclist and also does aero modeling. I don't know where he finds the time to do all of these things. Let's find out more in the interview. So welcome, Adi. Good afternoon to you and welcome to this podcast.
Thank you.
Thinkly.
Thank you. Thank you, Vipul. Thank you for that wonderful, though lengthy introduction, but thank you so much. Yes.
So if they have left out something, Adi, would you like to add?
No, Baba, no, enough. That's more than an introduction that I can take. Yeah, more than enough.
Okay. So, let's get straight into, today's podcast with, I have a question. You've been in this world for nearly 40 years. Actually, I realized it only after you sent me your profile that you've been around for 40 years. 40 years is a lot of time. You might have seen this whole world of creative, which is advertising, media, films, change many times over, So if you can walk us through some of the changes you've yourself experienced in your career and continue to experience, we'll get a little flavor of what kind of a person you are. Thank you.
Sure. So, few small corrections to to what you just said, Vipul. I've been in the world a lot more than 40 years. I've been in the world 61 years. That's my age. 40 years is the length of my career. And yes, there has been a lot of change in the advertising, communication, entertainment world. Though I have to say, there's no fundamental change in creativity. So creativity still stays the same. And if I were to define creativity very quickly, a creative idea basically has two components, which is novelty or newness, originality, all of that. That's novelty, and relevance. Relevance is a creative idea, or what the terminology that I prefer is creative solution, has to have relevance to the problem that it was created to solve. So novelty and relevance is really the way one defines creativity, and that fundamental definition of creativity has not changed, since the invention of the wheel. However, yes, entertainment, advertising, communication has evolved, and it's mainly evolved because of the media platforms that one has become exposed to. So I remember when I started in my advertising career, which was in 84, yes, in 84, when I started my advertising career, advertising was mainly print advertising. And then there was this thing called cinema advertising,
Right.
where there were ads that played in a movie theater.
That's right.
And yes, television had come around, but it wasn't such a big thing yet. Then there was the shift from print advertising to television advertising. And similarly, when TV opened up in 91 with the advent of satellite channels, you started getting more interesting television programming coming in. So from the old days of one channel of Doordarshan, television started getting more and more competitive, and hence advertising had to get more competitive. And I think the next big shift was the advent of the internet,
Yeah.
which then of course smartphones, and we know where we are today, where we're constantly scrolling on either Insta or FB or something or the other, and you know that's broadly the change that I think we've seen, which is media driven. And
Right.
as a result of that, I think communication has had to adapt
Right.
from print advertising, which was, say, largely newspaper, and people opened the newspaper for information,
Right.
whereas people switched on their television sets for entertainment. So that in itself was a difference and demanded different kind of communication. And today people are on their phones, 24/7. So that demands a whole different kind of approach to communication.
You had a lot of firsts, like we said at the start of the podcast itself. We said you have a lot of firsts. You created India's first soap opera, daily soap opera, so to say, the first game show, and so on. How have you? How what happens? We just want to understand the process. I mean, what happens when an idea which is unheard of comes to you or occurs to you or is told to you? Typically most people would like to probably repeat or adapt something that is working. How do you deal with something that's completely new and unheard of when it comes to you?
So when I'm working on something, on a project, and where I know that I want to be fresh, I need to be fresh because I need to break clutter, I need to grab attention for all of those reasons. Um, at In that situation, I am extremely nervous about any idea that I've heard of or seen before. So I stay away from those as much as I can. And sometimes it's disappointing because you come up with an idea that you think, wow, it's great. And then you switch on Netflix that night and you see, oh, shucks, it's the same idea, you know? And then you've got to scratch it out in your notebook. So I think you want stuff which is new. You want stuff which is fresh, and when you're actively looking for that, it's a huge rush when you actually stumble across something that you think, at least uh, you seem to think it's extremely fresh, and it's a huge high. Your first instinct is fear because it first looks extremely risky. It's like, I remember when we came up with the Kama Sutra condom campaign. It just looked extremely scary. To position a condom as an aphrodisiac was an extremely scary thought. To position Kama Sutra as the sexier condom was an extremely scary thought. Later on, when we came up with Saap CD, the idea of actually having two physical slides and people getting into the water, real water,
Yeah.
was difficult to digest in the beginning. When we did Shanti, to think of that this woman is going to have this arrow on her forehead as a bindi right through 260 episodes or whatever. My makeup guys were a little upset with me, that what's going on. So
Right.
all of these things, the first thing is fear, self-fear. You yourself are worried. You're worried. Is this going to fly? Is this going to work? And then there's resistance from every corner because nobody immediately accepts and loves a new idea. There's always resistance. There's always that feeling. And that's when you know that you've got something good. When everybody is resisting that idea and they say, no, 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 this is too risky. No, 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 this is going to create, a problem. That's when you know you actually got something interesting. And that's when you really have to just stick to your guns and, push for it. Provided, of course, you've done your homework, you've done your due diligence, and you know that this idea has a very good chance of working. You can never say that it's got a 100% chance of working. Nobody can say that. But at least you have a sense in your gut that this is going to do well.
Okay. So whatever risks you've taken so far, you say that they've always been backed with a little more research on whether it will work or not work. May not be 100% research, but it's been backed with some amount of homework, and it was not all gut.
So
the reason I'm asking you is a lot of creativity is positioned as being a lot of instinctive stuff, thing that they think of when they are asleep and write down at 2 a.m. in a notebook and then go and produce it the next morning. Most creative work that people have seen has always been made to look like this thing that suddenly occurred to them, eureka movement, and then, they've kind of gone ahead and done it. So you say there's a lot of research.
No, I don't say that. I think research is the wrong word because research immediately throws up the sense of organizations going through your, creative work and trying to figure out whether it works or not, doesn't work. I'll come to that as well. But I think what happens to a larger extent, at least where I'm concerned, is there's a lot of what I call personal research. Okay. There's a lot of personal experiencing of, if it's in advertising, of the product that I'm dealing with. I remember when I was working on Kawasaki Bajaj way back when, I didn't ride a bike at that time. I didn't ride a motorcycle. So I used to hitch a ride from the Lintas office, which was at Nariman Point, to my home, and I used to stay in Andheri East at the time. So I used to hitch rides with motorcycle riders from Lintas to Andheri East. And it used to take me about 4 rides to get home. And I would chat with them about motorcycles. So I think that was my research, immersing yourself in the product or in the situation is something that's the real research. And then you get organized research to perhaps test whether the idea has wings or not. And here is where, I learned something great from a person who headed a research organization called Pathfinders, which was Lintas's research organization, a person called Pranesh Mishra, who I hugely respect. And Pranesh said to me, think of research as a sheet, okay?
Right.
With holes cut into it. And imagine that the holes are different shapes. So you have square shapes, round shapes, triangular shapes, okay? And then you throw creative ideas through the sheet, okay? And the ones that fall through the sheet, you say, okay, this is passed through research, right? Now, the problem is if your research has only square shapes, round shapes, and triangular shapes, that's all the kind of creative ideas that are going to go through,
Right.
So your research has to also be creative. Your research also has to have, zigzaggy edges, which allow those really brilliant ideas to come through.
What I wanted to understand more is the thought process that happens. So you're saying you create something, you create an idea, you evolve it. Then when you find that, others are opposing it or resisting it, is when you know that, this is something that's going to work. Is that by and large true, or this is always true?
So there are two symptoms that I look for when I, present a creative idea. The first symptom is laughter. Okay. Right. Somebody laughs at it. I feel good. I feel, okay, this is interesting, because nobody laughs at an old joke. Okay. Right. So if the initial response is laughter, for me, that's a good sign. That means that what we've done is something new, something fresh. Okay. And at least it ticks that one box that, okay, this is so out there that people laugh at it. Okay. And the second thing is when after the initial laughter, they start shooting it down. And the thing is, any idea can be shot down. Okay.
Right.
Just by asking the wrong question, you know. So, for example, the famous
Okay.
little girl in the waterfall concept, all you have to do is to start by asking, who's your target audience? And it'll say, Indian women. What do Indian women wear? Saris. Okay, then maybe we should have her wearing a sari in the water.
Sorry, in the waterfall. Yeah.
And suddenly you've got a completely different idea. So I think, those two things are what I look for: laughter, and then, when they start uh, not accepting and resisting the idea a little bit, which happens, I feel okay. We're onto something because this is risky. This, or at least perceptionally, is risky. That means it's new. That means they can't find a box to slot it into.
Okay. So, I wanted to ask you a question which I've often asked you, but I think I'll ask you again over here for the benefit of a lot of the others. Is, you were in a field which was pretty glamorous, if I may use the word. You've done a lot of things which I may slot it under famous or infamous also, and a lot of your work is consumer facing. A lot of the work that you did out there was seen by the consumers. But now you got into a totally different genre of work, which is corporate filmmaking. How is it different? And, what kind of skills and knowledge from your advertising or uh, television days do you bring to the table? And how is corporate filmmaking different? Because typically a corporate film doesn't have any of those elements that, you just discussed about.
So I'll also tell you how I got into corporate films. I mean, because that's interesting. So '96 is when I was fairly on top of the world. I mean, I was doing well as an advertising guy. I'd done a lot of television, which was successful. You mentioned Saap CD. You mentioned Shanti. There was also a comedy show called Sorry Mary Laurie. I'd had my fair share of flops as well. I'd done a flop show called Maybe Detective, and one or two others as well, which were, they flopped. I mean, what to do? Um, but '96, there were a lot of things that happened in my life. I lost my father. I went through a divorce. I got remarried. A lot of turmoil in my personal life. And I remember when uh, 96, 97, all of this was going on. 97, I got remarried again. 98, I came back from my honeymoon and I had no clients. All my clients had left. I'd just gone for a 6-week honeymoon. I thought that's a very short honeymoon. But 6 weeks I went, and when I came back, I had no clients. I thought, okay, fine, they'll come back. But they never did. They never came back. And we went through a really, really bad phase because every time we started getting work, we'd get hit by something. The dot-com bust happened in '99. 2001 was 9/11 and all advertising budgets were cut. So all of this kind of stuff kept hitting us. And by around 2002 or so, we were right at the bottom. And I think I owed about 1.30 crore to the industry. No way of paying it back. Didn't know what to do. And eventually, and I've told you this story, but for the benefit of our viewers, eventually in around 2002 or 2003, I was completely broke, completely at the bottom. And as a almost as a last resort, I went to Siddhivinayak Temple. And this sounds like a Hindi film, but what can I say? It happened. This is the way it happened. And I went to Siddhivinayak because my grandparents used to go there. So I just went there. And I said, okay, I surrender. You decide what to do. You be my financial manager. I'll come and meet you once a week. You decide what I should do. And I really don't know how this happened, but within a week, work started coming in,
Right.
literally. But now it was corporate films. It wasn't ad films. So I started getting corporate film work from Mastech, then from HUL, and slowly we started. And I until then I used to look down my nose at corporate films. But I'd gone to Siddhivinayak, I humbled myself, I prayed like a madman. And now, he said, okay, here's the work. 1 week later, uh, I just said, okay, let's just take it, let's do it. And I started doing it. And now, in retrospect, when I look at that decision from a business perspective, I realized that it was a very right decision for two, three reasons. One is corporate films was not as competitive a field as say ad films were. Two is corporate films is not single person dependent. In ad film, it's the director who fronts the project.
That's right.
So I was actually able to build a team over the years, and with direct people who directed in their own right. Um, Also, the third thing is that by then we had a camera in house, we had an editing system in house, both of which I could use for corporate films, but I couldn't use them for ad films because you needed higher level equipment for that.
Yeah.
So for the corporate films, I was able to use in-house equipment. Therefore, my costs were down. Okay.
Right.
So less competition, lower cost, greater margin. Able to do more projects simultaneously by virtue of having more people in. And most importantly, we moved from fiction, which was advertising and television,
Right.
into non-fiction, which was corporate films and corporate
That's right.
social documentaries. And I think that set us up for today's digital world, where the emphasis is on authenticity, the emphasis is on being, real, being true,
Correct.
and all of those things. So I think that's really served us well in this transition that we made from, old-fashioned corporate films to more, stuff that works in the digital age.
So if there is some element which hasn't changed between that and now, would that be storytelling? To be, if I can put it in two
Absolutely.
words.
I mean, storytelling will never change.
Right.
You can basically you build brands by taking a product and wrapping a story around.
Right.
So and there's the famous thing that I do with in some of my workshops where I show people this piece of rock.
Right.
I don't know if you can see it.
We can. Yeah.
And so I picked this up. In 1991, I'd gone to the US and gone to around the Rocky Mountains area, and there was a stall over there. And in the 70s or so, a meteorite had passed very close to the Earth. Okay, and there was a shower from the meteorites.
Right.
And in this particular area, and these guys had collected this, and they were selling these meteorite rocks as souvenirs. Okay. So I bought one of these now, and guess how much this little thing cost me, Vipul?
$10.
$10. Okay, great. So now when I ask this question at a workshop, I get all kinds of answers ranging from $10 to $50 to $100. Yesterday, I was with someone who said 1 crore. Actually, the truth is I picked up this stone from Dharavi. Okay. Now, the point is that the story has made a free stone into 800 rupees, 1991. Therefore, I would say at least, what, $2,000 in today's worth. Okay. Right. So a story wrapped around this has enhanced the value of this. And we do it with everything. You take sugar water, black sugar water, you wrap a whole bunch of stories around it, call it Coca-Cola, and suddenly from $2, it's $20.
Right.
So I think storytelling hasn't changed. And I also caution my students or the people that don't think that, I mean, in this case, I was telling you a bullshit story, just to make a point. But in advertising, that doesn't work. Your stories better be grounded in reality. You can't just tell bullshit stories. You can certainly tell stories which show how the product fits into my life or how the product will help, me project myself to the world. But
Right.
you can't you can't overdo that.
So at
Yeah.
this point, I'll just take in one point which is coming from Vivek Saxena. He says creativity has always been in vogue, but would you agree that it is more and more moving towards capturing attention rather than storytelling? That seems to be a lost art.
So I think creativity is always an instrument used to draw attention. We are drawn. We stop when we see the new. You know.
Right.
So I think that's always now. There's no reason why storytelling and creativity have to be mutually exclusive. I mean, if your stories are new, they will grab attention. I'm not quite seeing the differential between or the distinction that he's making between creativity and storytelling. I think creativity is an element used by storytelling to grab attention.
Right. So I think what he was trying to say is, the intention of creativity these days. I mean, especially in the virtual world, Insta reels or some of these things, is mainly to gain some attention rather than to tell a story. Is I think what
But I think the young people today with the reels, they tell stories in 5 seconds.
right,
So I think those stories they're still stories.
right,
You see a dog hugging a kitten.
correct.
That's still a kid. That's still a story.
There's still a story.
There's still a story in that. It may be a 5 second reel, but there's still a story in that.
Right. Okay. So we'll come to the question which we got on to your life story somewhere along the way. But, in terms of when it comes to corporate filmmaking, what are some of the skills and knowledge that you gained in your advertising and television stint that you bring to the table while while making corporate film?
So obviously, there's all the technical skills. The
Right.
camera, the editing, the writing, all of that, which I took from advertising and television, certainly came in handy in when I make corporate films. But I think there's some parts which are unique to corporate filmmaking. Okay, and one is that when I make a corporate film, I'm actually trying to discover the soul of an organization, and
Right.
I'm trying to project that to achieve a business purpose. Now, I think that's very different from advertising or television. So that's something different. And when you find that soul, you still have to project it in a manner that moves the audience, that creates an emotional response in the audience, and that's where again the paths converge, where advertising, television, and corporate filmmaking again converge, because in all these cases, you want to move the audience, you want to create an emotional response. So
Right.
I think the convergence is in the technical part as well as in the response part.
Right.
The divergence is only in the fact that one is fiction, and therefore you are creating something,
Creating some.
and the other is non-fiction, and there you are discovering something.
Correct. So, you talked about emotion. I mean, typically emotion is not something that is normally associated with a corporate film. But you clearly seem to be tilting onto the other side. You're saying that a film, a corporate film should, bring out some sort of an emotion when it is watched.
Yeah,
Would that be the right way to look at it?
100%. And the reason is that I believe that all human behavior is influenced by emotion. You know, uh, and emotion is not only rona dhona, it's not only crying.
Correct. Yeah.
It can be humor, it can be pride. Pride is an emotion. You
Right.
know, and simple example, for example, that I like to give is, you buy a Ferrari from the heart, not from the mind.
Right. Absolutely.
You spend crores of rupees from the heart, not from the mind. Okay. Because if you thought about it, then you'd buy 100 nanos. Why the hell would you buy one Ferrari? It
Correct.
doesn't make
Absolutely.
sense. You know?
Absolutely.
So emotion is very important in influencing the way we behave. Now, there is a thought that, oh, corporate people don't have emotion. No, sorry, they all have emotion. Every corporate person is a dad when he goes home. Okay. And every corporate person has an emotion about his own or his or her own job. You know, they have a certain sense of pride in the work that they're doing. They have a certain passion, and it's about bringing out all those emotions that help to project that company, to help to project that organization in the most exciting life. You know,
Right.
Apple is emotionally different as an organization, and that emotion has been invested in that organization by a bunch of communicators.
Correct.
So that's critical. All organizations have some a basket of emotions that have been placed inside them, and then that is projected to the outside world. So if you didn't have an emotional film, then make a PPT, you know. But why show a film? Film is an emotional medium, so you
Right.
need that. You need, and it works. It does make a difference to, when I see pride in the person, uh, I I feel good about that.
Okay. So now coming to our topic of this discussion. So we said creative communication for business. Can you unlock or can you demystify these two words, creative communication, for us? Because what is it that you mean by creative communication, or what do we mean by business by creative communication? If you can,
So
unlock it.
I don't know how much time we have. We've
We
got
have
about,
time. No worry. We
okay.
have time.
So I want to say that uh, a, a business without communication, okay, runs the risk of being invisible, right?
Right.
So if I take an egg, a hen lays an egg, doesn't crow, doesn't make a noise, nobody knows that there's an egg, right? The hen makes the little bit of noise, and that's when you know. Now, every business needs to communicate. It needs to communicate about itself to its various audiences. Its audiences could be its customers, its B2B customers, other stakeholders, partners, collaborators, etc., etc. Without communication, the business itself uh, is invisible. So that's the role of communication in business. Now, I'm not sure about the word creative in the context of a corporate film as much as that the corporate film needs to make me feel something. Okay,
That's right.
has to has to represent the company, discover and project the soul of the organization in as authentic a manner, and at the same time, it has to make me as the viewer feel something. Okay, so I think that's with relation to a corporate film. But if you look at just a business, okay, um, and assuming that you're not communicating only through a corporate film, but you're communicating through any and every medium that's at your disposal. Um, Obviously, you want to communicate, and obviously, you want that communication to cut through clutter so that it is noticed. And that, I think, is the role of creative communication in making sure that the business, what it stands for, its products, its services are noticed in today's hyper cluttered world. Uh,
Right.
you need to have that creative communication, and this I'm talking beyond just corporate film.
So, typical question which gets asked at various meetings that we attend as people from the communication industries. All this is fine for companies like the large companies like the L&T or the Unilever, but we are a small company. We don't have those kinds of budgets. You know, we don't. How does one crack the code when it comes to these questions? Is it only about budgets, or budgets is just one of the aspects to be considered?
So definitely budget plays a role, but I will say budget and attention getting, okay, are both are on, I won't say opposite sides, but if you don't have the budget, you better be extremely attention getting. Okay. And I'll give you a real life example, which is the Kama Sutra condoms campaign. Um, when we did that campaign, it was all over. And, it was one of the most talked about campaigns of that time, right? Now, of course, it would look like an ad for candy floss or something. It was actually quite stale. But for its time, it was very advanced. Now, at that time, a good campaign, a good national level campaign would require a budget of at least 1.5 crores. Okay, at that time, and I'm talking 1991. The budget for Kama Sutra was about 28 lakhs. Okay, but it felt like 3 crores. Okay, because it got talked about, it got spun around, there was controversy, it entered bedroom conversations and living room conversations and school corridor, college corridor conversations, and all of that. And, it was talked about, and that's what creativity does for you. It actually, makes it possible for you to spend a little less money, and therefore it's important, if you have less money, to actually be a little more creative in your communication.
So would so put differently, will it mean that creative communication is to find ways and means, or have communication which gets other people talking about it, hopefully in a good way, about your brand and about your products and services? Would that be a good way of putting it?
So I think if I were to really deep dive into this, I would say that it starts with what is the product or service that you're selling, and you can just say, okay, it's this, right? It's a pen or it's a notepad. Okay.
Right.
Now, I think that's lazy. Okay. To just say, this is what my product is. Okay.
Right.
If you really want to, you can start thinking a little bit further about your product or service and start applying creativity in the way you define how that product or service is going to fit into your audience's life. Okay. So, for example, so the question that we like to ask is, what is the real business that you are in? So, for example, Indigo Airlines. Okay. At surface level, you'll say Indigo is in the airline business.
Absolutely.
Right? But actually, no, Indigo is in the on-time business. It's in the punctuality business. Now, when you define Indigo as being in the on-time or punctuality business, suddenly the way you see Indigo changes. Okay.
Right.
Now, it's the same thing with, a lot of companies have gone out of business because they haven't understood this. Kodak is the famous example where, Kodak thought they were in the film business, making film, but actually they were in the memories business. And if they understood that, then the transition would probably have been easier. I personally, if I were advising Indigo, I would say you're not in the on-time business. I would say you're in the no-stress business. Okay, which is one level higher than the on-time business. On-time is almost a feature of the airline. No stress is more of a benefit. And I would say that, and that would probably, change some of the Nazi-ish behavior that we see at the Indigo counters, to do with your, rush, get going. And, because there's so much in the on-time business,
Right.
Okay. So, and if I were to take another example, again in the airline industry, Kingfisher, on the other hand, was in the King of Good Times business.
Luxury business.
In the luxury business. So they had somebody pick you up at the curb, take you, escort you all the way, little things like that. Now, the point is to think deeply about your own product or service and try and understand what is the real business you're in. And then start projecting that in with whatever budget you have. if you've understood that, okay, this is my real business, how do you start projecting that with whatever means and resources you have? And if you have actually selected something interesting over there in your real business, then it will get attention. And that attention will, to some extent, compensate for the lack of resources and budget.
So I'm sure, I mean, lack of resources, I think is something you have to expect. I mean, I think the biggest of our clients will always tell us we have limited resources. Nobody is ever going to tell us we have unlimited budgets. I think that's a reality which everybody in the communications industry will live with. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at, your business and what it stands for and your product and what it delivers. To look at benefits to the customer, and then position our communication accordingly. That will help us look at our communication differently than what we possibly currently look at. Okay, now we'll come to the reason of this community. I mean, this community is about business networking, and a lesser known fact which we didn't mention at the beginning of the introduction, I mean, at the beginning of this discussion, is the fact that you are an active networker. How has business networking helped you in your business? If you can just talk a
So,
little bit about how business networking has helped you in your business.
sure. So for the longest time, till about 2015, I knew nothing about networking. I didn't even know uh, that it was a critical part of business because I didn't know anything about business. My background is, I'm a physics graduate, so I have no idea about anything in business. I come from a showbiz family, so no real understanding of business at that time. In fact, that's part of the reason why I had this huge problem uh, between '97 and 2003. Is because I didn't know how to acquire customers. I didn't know how to bring in business. I just wasn't equipped, and I didn't know how to start. Uh,
Right.
from about 2003 to about 2015, as I said, we started creating a niche for ourselves in the corporate film industry. And HUL became a very large client of ours. Okay.
Right.
And work just kept coming in. So I didn't need to network anymore again.
Right.
So for a large part of my career, I never felt the need to network. And I got into networking completely by accident because an old school friend of mine, Khuzem Sakarwala, called me up out of the blue and said, there's this organization called BNI, and why don't you come for a meeting? And I said, nah, networking, I can't even see myself doing that. But then I went for the meeting and I felt, hey, this is interesting. The structure, the method, the rigor. There was science to networking, which even in that one meeting, I kind of latched onto and loved. And I suddenly said, okay, as a communicator, networking was my way of being able to reach out to my customers without spending huge sums of money, without advertising. All I had to do was to impress. And at that time, the chapter that I did eventually join in BNI was about 58 members strong at that time. We're now 150 members, but at that time, 58 members. And I thought all I have to do is convince these 58 people that I'm good at what I do. And then each of them convinces one person, and I've got, a basket of 58 potential new clients, um, and sure enough, that's how it works. So it's like a ripple in a pond. The
Right.
stone you drop touches your closest concentric circle, it impresses them, and then that impression keeps spreading outward. And I was very fortunate that people in BNI actually uh, liked what I had to say and started taking my message out to potential customers of mine. And yeah, I got a lot of business as a result of that. So now I'm
Seasoned network.
I'm converted to the cause of network.
Right. Okay. So you've also held leadership roles in BNI, in addition to running your very, very successful business of Squircle Productions. You also held a leadership role. Uh, I mean, apart from it, obviously put a lot of demands on your time. But did it help you, or did it, contribute to your business in any particular way, which you would like us to know?
Absolutely. So, I mean, as a member of BNI, I started on the leadership journey as a president of my chapter within about 6 to 8 months of joining BNI. And then went into, the whole regional team, which is I was made an ambassador and then a director consultant. And eventually I actually rose to being an area director, which meant that I was looking after about 20 chapters. Until very recently, maybe about 2 or 3 months back, that was my role in BNI, and which I've, very reluctantly given up, only because I'm now, working on an OTT show, and therefore I have to put all my time and energy into that.
Right.
So I did have to give that role up. I continue to be a DC in the chapter. What have all these things, all these leadership roles given me? Well, first, huge amounts of visibility, because I've managed to, be seen by people outside of my chapter. So when you say 20 chapters, that's about 1,200 members, 1,100 members. That's huge. Okay. But more than that, it gives me exposure uh, to people from different businesses. And therefore, the learning that I have got out of being in these leadership roles has been tremendous. And I will say that's been the biggest uh, takeaway for me. As a result of being in leadership roles, people ask you questions. Questions make you think, and questions
Yeah.
coming from different perspectives makes you think about what you're doing, about your own business, and
Right.
applying some of those things to your own business. And it's really, really stood me in great stead. So I would say visibility and learning have been my two greatest takeaways from leadership in BNI.
Great. So, what would be your advice to young professionals who are, come joining the industry, or, to young or even experienced business owners who have never thought about networking? What would be your advice?
Jump straight in, uh, get into a platform. BNI is great. I would recommend it wholeheartedly to people, because what it does is it gives you a structured uh, way of networking. And networking is a subject that isn't taught that much in schools and colleges. I wish it was. And as a result, we're woefully inadequate in our own attempts at networking. Some of us are, yes, born networkers. We're extroverted. We happen to have the ability to walk into a room and create an impression, and some of us don't have that. I didn't have that. Um, and it's only when I got into BNI that I kind of came out of my shell, because
Right.
I was an introvert other than otherwise. So I
Right.
would just say trust in an organization like BNI, get into BNI, and then give yourself to that process, give yourself to that, surrender yourself to that process, and the process is so robust that it will carry you along to success.
Okay. So, just the last two questions. These have come from the audience, so I'll ask them. Coming back to your specialty of storytelling and creative communication. So I'll take two questions. One from Shantanu Jadhav. He asks, how do you approach incorporating storytelling into creative communication strategies? So that's question number one. And there's a similar question from Jinal, which you partly answered, but I'll still ask it. How can businesses leverage creativity and differentiate themselves in a crowded marketplace? I'll ask this question, although you are partly answered both before,
So
but I would like you to
let's take
elaborate.
Shantanu's question again. Can you just repeat Shantanu?
Yeah. So Shantanu's question is, how do you approach incorporating storytelling into creative communication strategies?
So the thing is, there's a little nugget that I've heard, which is that facts tell, but stories sell. Okay, I think that's very true. It's a fact that we remember stories. We remember, and because from time immemorial, we've communicated through stories.
Right.
If you look at our religious texts, for example, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, okay, uh, we're actually being told to behave in a certain way uh, through storytelling. This continues in everything that we want to do.
Right.
Uh, Whether we want to sell a bottle of water or whether we want to, sell a jet plane, you need to wrap a story around it. You need to uh, show me the dream, show me how this fits into my life. How does this and tell and show it to me in a story. It could be a visual story, it could be a story with words. But the more you do that, and if the story itself is innovative, interesting, touches some
Oh,
emotional
yeah.
chords in me, has a bit of an arc, a little bit of laughter, a little bit of joy, uh, I will remember that story much more likely, and more importantly, I will then tell that story forward. You know,
Right.
and it's little stories that you want to know. It's like if I take, okay, there's a cricket ball on my desk right now, right? It's just, you can tell a story of how this cricket ball is made, okay, and that would be interesting, just telling the story of how this cricket ball is made, right? Or you
Right.
can tell the story of how this cricket ball is used. So I can tell the story of, by the way, this is the cricket ball that uh, Shoaib Akhtar used, okay, when he was bowling to Sachin, okay,
Right.
same cricket ball, okay, and this is the kind of delivery that he bowled,
Right.
blah blah blah. So I've taken a story, and instead of the how the origin story, so you can have an origin story, okay,
Yeah.
or you can have story of product or service in use, okay, which is a
Right.
next level from an origin story, okay. The third level would be the product in my life, you know so origin story, story of product in use, product in my life is a third level kind of story that I could tell, which now suddenly I can talk about uh, this dad and this kid uh, going on a little drive, and the kid happens to open the glove compartment of the car, and this cricket ball falls out, and the kid says, "Hey, what's this? I've never seen this before." And the dad says, "Well, that's the ball that you know um I had when I won this championship, Kanga League or whatever."
Right.
Just making all this up, right? But that's a story, and that's an emotional story of the ball in my life. Okay, so there are all these stories, and each of these stories can actually help you make this product interesting, make this romance, this product, make it something that much more interesting than just what it is and what you see. you know and I think that's what stories do. Stories rub against products. They infuse themselves into the product, and then they give a new life to the product. And I love stories. I mean, I think that they're absolutely critical, not just to differentiate, not just to get attention, but
Right.
also to make that product something that you want to make part of your life.
Okay. So Adi, I don't know if you realized it, but you answered Jinal's question also, in the
Wow.
process of answering this
Two
question.
for the price of one.
Two for the price of one. Thank you so much. And Adi, before we conclude, if you can share your mobile number and your email ID, or your email ID, if whichever is convenient, so that uh, if the audience would like to get in touch with you, there is a place they can contact you. I'll also share your LinkedIn the link to your LinkedIn profile, so that if they want to be connected with you, they can do that. Sharing, if you'd like to share.
So I will share my email ID.
Right.
It's adi dot pocha, Pocha, at the rate squircle, SQUIRKLE .in. Adi.pocha at squircle.in.
Right.
And I have to also share this with the warning that I don't check my email. Sorry about that. But I do check my LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
So
So
LinkedIn
your
is the best way.
LinkedIn link also will be shared on the group, so that those who want to get in touch with you can do so. So thank you very much, Adi. I know you had a little bit of a family thing to take care of, but you still made the time and were there on time for the interview. Thank you so much for sparing the time and sharing all your thoughts. I hope the audience is only richer out of after hearing you. I wish you all the best for your OTT. And, if you can share the story someday, that'll be great fun. But I know you're not going to tell me till it happens. So have a nice day and God bless.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, listening, and watching. God bless.